chapter 4 or chapter 14. Chapter 17, week 14. Okay, we're going to talk about learning and memory, the biological perspective of learning and memory. So here we go. It's kind of a long chapter. Maybe. There we go. Okay. As humans, learning how to get along in society that we have created takes a lifetime. Our memory is the culmination of our ability to learn about life and life circumstances. It is our memory that allows us to act appropriately in situations. If we kill someone or drive on the left side of the road in the United States, of course, there are actually two places in the world. Well, there's more than two. Any place that England settled, I'm not sure which side of the road they drive on in India, but in Japan, they drive on the left side of the road, and in England, of course, they drive on the left side. I've lived in Germany. I've been all over Europe, and Europe, everything is on the right side. They drive on the right side. Germany, France, the Netherlands, Italy, Austria, they all drive on the right side of the road. If we kill someone or drive on the left side of the road in the United States or just about, or Europe, except for England, we will be taken out of society either through death or incarceration. And of course, it's really dangerous to drive on the wrong side of the road, so you have to be careful. Our memory dictates our behavior. Oddly, psychologists and medical doctors have been able to trace and map the memory process using individuals who have damaged select areas of their brain due to tumors, lesions, or trauma. These insults to the brain cause lapses of memory that looked at in toto constructs a memory map to the process. Skill learning is learning to perform a task that requires motor coordination. That's known as skill learning. If you've ever participated in athletics, then practicing a play is skill learning. If you play basketball, of course, shooting is skill learning, and then you back up a little bit and shoot again to see if you can hit from farther out, and then eventually you can hit from 3-point range. Priming is exposure to the stimulus to a stimulus which facilitates subsequent responses to the same or similar stimulus. So if you were, well, that's what I was just talking about. Actually, what you're doing is priming. So if you start shooting, you might shoot from a little bit closer, then you move farther and farther out, and that's priming. You're getting the range so that you can start hitting from farther and farther out. But you would probably start from inside the 3-point arc, and then move out to beyond the 3-point arc in your practice. Conditioning, an individual comes to associate two stimuli or a stimulus and response. This is Edward Tolman. He hypothesized through research with rats that they create a cognitive map in their minds from experience. And of course, he took some hungry rats and he blocked them from going the way that they normally went, and because they had a cognitive map in their mind, they were able to reroute themselves and to find their food. Tolman was also able to prove that his rats had knowledge that, unless tested, could not be discounted. This knowledge he referred to as latent learning. Tolman later wrote that different kinds of learning may follow different laws. A good example of that would be if you've never been to a certain area in a town like Gallup. You go to Gallup, and you've never been to a certain place, but you've driven on select roads, but you've never quite driven all the way down to where what you're looking for, maybe a store. You're still able to get there. And this isn't because you've been there before, but because you know that if you follow this road, you will get to your destination, and that's known as latent learning. Iconic memory is brief memory of an image, part of the short-term memory. Echoic memory is a brief memory of a sound, part of the short-term memory. So iconic has to do with seeing things, your eyesight, and echoic has to do with your ears, hearing a specific sound. It's kind of interesting. Sometimes you'll hear a loud bang, and if you've heard a lot of gunfire and a lot of different gunfire, you can tell what kind of weapon it is, or that whether it's a weapon or not. It may be a little boy taking a paper bag and blowing it up and exploding it, or maybe a balloon exploding. You'll be able to tell the difference of that, and that's echoic memory. Short term, or you hear somebody's voice, and it's somebody that you have talked to before, and as soon as you hear their voice, even though you can't see their face, you know that it's that person. Short-term memory, iconic, echoic, or cognitive memory that lasts for about 30 seconds if unrehearsed, and that's your short-term memory. So if you hear a piece of information or you see something, uh, if you remembered everything that happened to you every second of the day, your brain would get pretty full, and you probably wouldn't be able to remember everything anyway. But your short-term memory lasts for about 30 seconds. Intermediate term memories, some psychologists refer to memories that may last longer than the short term memory, an hour or a day, but are not put in long term memory as intermediate term memory. And this is one of I have a problem with giving tests where individuals will study for the test, and of course they study the night before, put all this stuff in their brain, and then they take the test, and the next day they've it's gone. They've forgotten it. Why? Because it just went into intermediate memory. So I would rather give you a test that doesn't really test you as much as it forces you to find out information. Uh, and then that's the way I give my quizzes. I was just talking to a colleague about this. The fact that I don't test to really test you, I test to teach you. So what I want you to know is, you find a question on one of my quizzes, and you can't remember what the answer is, so you have to look it up. And when you look it up, you've got 4 different answers that you've got to figure out which one of these things is the right answer. Um, and potentially you look up all 4 items and you realize, wait a minute, that's not anything. He just made that up. And of course, then you can discard that one, and eventually you get to the right answer. And maybe you picked it right off the bat because you do have knowledge in this area. And that's the way I like to test people. I'm not really testing you to test you. I'm testing you to teach you. And the reason I give you the quizzes that I give you is because I want you, those are the pieces of information from a select chapter that I want you to remember. So that is why I give you the tests that I give you. I hope it's working. Possibly, this is kind of a new idea. People have been testing people to make sure that they know all this information, and that's not really what I'm doing. I'm giving you the information. I give you a question. There should be only one right answer to any question, and that's what I want you to remember. Long-term memory is permanent memory, memories that last the rest of an individual's life, and hopefully some of this information will stick. In other words, instead of just intermediate memory, it goes into long-term memory. And that's another reason why I tell you so many stories about things. I tell you stories because stories, you can tie real life situations to pieces of information, and potentially you'll remember the story, and that will remind you of the information that I'm trying to get you to remember. The capacities of long-term memory are almost limitless. Research shows that college students can recognize 50,000 different words. People who learn a second language acquire 100,000 items of knowledge. Memory trace, the path that memories are placed in the long-term memory, and that's known as the memory trace. The more severe the damage to a medial temporal lobe, the more impaired the ability to establish new memories. And that's the medial temporal lobe here, this portion right here, and over here. Of course, there's two halves of the brain. Work with people with hippocampal damage shows that the hippocampus is probably the final location of memory formation, and the hippocampus is right here. This is the hippocampus right there. These individuals can still support some degree of complex memory formation, but not as much as they could if they didn't have a damaged hippocampus. One system includes the hippocampus. This system requires information about relationships among stimuli and events, and this is known as declarative memories. And of course, you can see the hippocampus in the middle of the brain, and we saw it back here. This is it right here, is the hippocampus. There is a system that includes the dorsal striatum. This system mediates the formation of reinforced stimulus responses, associations, habits, or non-declarative memories. And of course, this is the hippocampus that we saw before. There's your striatum right there. And it's right on top of the hippocampus. Let's see if we can see it back here. No, we can't. Okay. There is a system that includes the amygdala. The amygdala are at the end of the hippocampus, and that's one of the reasons why the amygdala are very important to memory, because they are in a very close proximity to the hippocampus. This system mediates rapid acquisition of behaviors on the basis of biologically significant events with effective properties, events that arouse emotion. So the more emotion that you can arouse, and this is another reason why I tell you the stories that I tell you, the more likely that it will stick in your brain. Because the hippocampus and the amygdala are right next to each other. The amygdala is at the end of the hippocampus. Researchers have found that animals who cache food have neurons in the hippocampus that are activated when they get into a particular location where they have cached food. Cached, of course, means that they've hidden it. It's like digging a hole and burying your money, burying all your gold. You've cached your gold. These neurons are referred to as place cells. These spatial view cells are seen in the larger hippocampuses of birds who catch food. And not all birds do, of course. Some birds will hide sections of bunches of food. We found the same thing in humans. If humans have to remember a great deal of information, a lot of times we will see these place cells with the humans as well. When information is properly encoded, there are two areas of the brain that are activated when the memory is remembered. And one is the prefrontal cortex, and the other is the parahippocampal cortex. And this is the prefrontal cortex right here. It's right in the front of your brain. And then right behind it is the parahippocampal cortex. Pictures are remembered in the right prefrontal cortex in both hemispheres of the parahippocampal cortex. Words are remembered in the left prefrontal cortex and the left hemisphere of the parahippocampal cortex. Now, this is one of the reasons why when you've had a blow to the head that we ask you, how many fingers am I holding up? For one thing, we want to know if you can hear and recognize what we're saying. The other thing is that we are holding up fingers to see if your vision is impaired. If we're holding up 3 fingers or 2 fingers, we want to see if your vision is impaired. And we want to know if that portion of your brain has been damaged at all. A lot of times what will happen, see, your brain is kind of floating around in fluid, and it's not very thick, but that fluid acts as a cushion. So if you get a blow to the head in the left frontal lobe, it's also going to impact on the back because you get the rebound effect. You hit it in one area and the brain swishes around and it hits the skull in the opposite 180 degrees away from that area. So we want to know how much damage has been done. Can you hear us? Can you see what we're talking about? Do you understand what we're saying? And that's one of the reasons why we talk to you after you've had a blow to the head. The hippocampal system is not a repository of long-term memory. Permanent storage is thought to occur in regions of the neocortex where the information is first processed and held in short-term memory. This information is further processed in the medial temporal region, but this area is not the location of long-term memory either, merely an area of consolidation. Imaging research has verified two regions of the brain used in establishing declarative memory: the medial temporal lobe and the diencephalic system. Imaging of the brain shows activation in both encoding of the new material and retrieval. And now that we have technology, functional MRIs, and PET scans, we can tell which area of your brain is being activated when we give you information. And this is one of the reasons why we know where all of this stuff is, where all of this stuff takes place. Encoding takes place in the rostral regions of the hippocampal area. Retrieval episodic memories are located primarily in the caudal portions of the hippocampus. Encoding takes place in the rostral regions of the hippocampal area. Retrieving episodic memories are located primarily in the caudal portions of the hippocampus. Looking at models of encoding and retrieval of the same information, researchers and theorists ponder if the two systems aren't identical, and this is by following it through its memory trace. Skill memory, there are three types of skill memory that researchers have delved into to discover brain areas involved in them: sensory motor skills, perceptual skills, and cognitive skills. One has to do with thought, one has to do with seeing, and the other has to do with sensory motor or your senses causing movement. Imaging of people performing skills from memory show that there are three areas activated in the process: the basal ganglia, and of course this is the basal ganglia that hooks on to the hippocampus. The cerebellum, and the cerebellum, of course, is in the very back of your brain. We used to think it had to do with only with movement, but now we know it has to do with thought processes and memory. And the motor neocortex. And the motor neocortex is right on the top of your skull, right on the top of your brain, and that's it right there, the neocortex. Amnesia, severe memory impairment, but seldom is it complete. Retrograde amnesia is back in time from the incident. Retro means back, and grade means in time. So it's amnesia where you can't remember what happened before. You can't remember some or all of one's past after a select incident. Anterograde amnesia is forward in time from the incident. You can't establish some or any new memories after an accident. And of course, we've seen movies where this was the case. 50 First Dates is a movie about a lady who has anterograde amnesia. She has damage to a portion of her brain where she can't remember what happened the day before. She can't form new memories. So every time she sees a select individual, it's like she sees them for the first time. When HM was 16, he developed seizures. By age 27, the seizures were so bad that he had to quit work. Medication could no longer control his problem. A neurosurgeon determined that both temporal lobes were involved. He excised most of the anterior temporal lobe, the amygdala, and hippocampus in both hemispheres of his brain. HM can't remember anything from 10 years before his operation. He has retrograde amnesia. HM only has short-term memory and can't establish any new long-term memories. He also has anterograde amnesia. Now, of course, they did this so that his seizures would go away, and it did work. But what they did was destroy any possibility, any old memories. They destroyed a lot of old memories, and they destroyed the probability that he would create new memories. There are two types of memory: declarative memory, which represents information acquired by learning, These are the facts that you learn, declarative memory, and procedural memory, things that people know that they can show by doing. And that would be driving a car, that would be cooking a select dish, or making a salad. That would be procedural memory. You have to do this before you can do that. HM could not form new declarative memories, but he could form new procedural memories. And we call that muscle memory. Procedural memories, a lot of times we call it muscle memory. He had muscle memory, but he didn't have any declarative memory. And I'm not sure why I put this in here, but there it is. And there you go. The same picture we saw before. After HM's case became widely known, cases of similar results came to the attention of the medical community. Herpes simplex viruses can, on rare occasions, destroy tissue of the medial temporal lobe, causing similar results. And usually this is, and I hate to say this, but this is herpes simplex. There are several different types of herpes simplex. It causes chickenpox. You can get fever blisters, which are another form of herpes simplex. It's oral herpes. Or you can get genital herpes. Genital herpes is erosive. In other words, it destroys tissue. And this is the kind that if it gets into your temporal lobe, it will destroy the tissue of that area. So herpes simplex viruses are sometimes erosional. Normally they're not. If you get chickenpox, well, chickenpox are to some extent because they will cause scars, but usually oral herpes doesn't bother you that much. Ischemia, reduced blood flow to the brain, as in the case of a stroke or heart attack, can damage the medial temporal lobe, causing similar results. And this is tiny little strokes is what we're talking about. Encephalitis, inflammation of the brain, causes similar results as happened to HM. In A was messing around with a miniature foil used in fencing, and these are miniature foils that we're looking at right here. They're not very long. Somehow the sword entered his nostril and skewered him through his sinus cavities and into his diencephalon. And there's your diencephalon right there. And you can see how close it is to your nasal passages. This is your face right here. And you stick it in through your nose. And by golly, he got it right there. The injury damaged the dorsomedial thalamus, destroyed the mammillary body, and created a lesion on the hypothalamus that destroyed 2/3 of his hypothalamus. NA suffered anterograde amnesia. NA's short-term memory was intact, but his declarative memory was absent, though he had procedural memory. Once again, he had muscle memory, but he didn't have declarative memory. He couldn't form new ideas. He couldn't learn new information unless it was procedural. Korsakoff syndrome is a profound amnesia associated with chronic use of alcohol. There is a deterioration of the diencephalon, the hippocampus, the amygdala, and some of the frontal cortex. The problem is that the liver is so busy processing alcohol, it doesn't do a proper job processing vitamins, especially vitamin B1, also known as thiamine. Chronic alcoholics will often display a marked retrograde amnesia. Curiously, alcoholics will often fill in the missing information with fantastic stories that are either constructed from their stuporous inebriated state or suggested by someone else. This fantasy memory is referred to as confabulation. And of course, you can convince them of just about anything because they don't have that portion of the brain that removes ridiculous ideas. If you tell them something, they'll believe it. Work by Estonian scientist Envil Tolving led to the bifurcation of declarative memory, facts and information, into two types. Semantic memory is generalized information, and episodic memory is autobiographical memory that makes up an individual's personal history. So we have two different types of declarative memory. We have trivial pursuit type, the semantic memory, which is generalized information, And then we have our own stories, which is episodic memory. Casey sustained brain injuries due to a traffic accident. After the accident, Casey suffered damage to the frontal parietal cerebral cortex, damage to the right parietal occipital cerebral cortex, severe shrinkage of the hippocampus, and severe shrinkage of the parahippocampal cortex. Due to the damage, Casey lost his ability to recall episodic memory. Couldn't remember anything about himself. Casey still maintains semantic memory but can't remember who he is. The problem seems to be in the damage to his cortex, not the damage to his hippocampus. Researchers feel that it is the frontal parietal damage that causes his loss of memory. Memory can be divided into two structured stages: iconic and echoic memory. Initial presentation of a stimulus arrives in the brain as a momentary stimulation that can readily disappear. Short-term memory is iconic or echoic memory that the individual seeks to maintain. This may last for a minute or so. Intermediate memory, short-term memory that you are able to hold because of its novel subject, or that it is readily organized in the brain, for example, a weather report. Long-term memory, shorter duration memory that is placed in a more permanent area of the cerebral cortex, where it may be recalled days, months, or even years after the fact. And then permanent memory lasts a lifespan. Long-term memory can be accomplished using several techniques: skill learning, learning challenging tasks over several sessions; priming, stimuli that is altered due to previous exposure to the same or similar stimuli; conditioning, tying a stimulus response to a reward or punishment. There are two different types of conditioning. Classical conditioning is tying a stimulus response to an unconditioned stimulus, and operant conditioning is tying a stimulus response to a reward or a punishment. Research indicates, so you might ask yourself, well, how many times does it take to learn something? And the answer is the magic number of 3. If you practice something 3 times, it sticks. And of course, the more you're doing something, like if you're a Michael Jordan and they're teaching you a new movement, because you already know these, you're a basketball wizard, because you have all these skills already. All you need to do is prime this, and you have the skill almost immediately. That's because it is priming it for you. Um, you've primed it. So if you're learning a new skill, about 3 times is it. And if you've ever been an athlete and you had to learn a new skill, it probably took you 3 times for the coach to run through whatever the play was for you to get it down. It took about 3 times. So the rule is 3 times. So if you're learning something that you don't know, you're having a difficult time remembering something, all you need to do is to think about it 3 times. This is one of the reasons why when you're in the military, what they'll do is they'll tell you what they're going to teach you, then they'll teach you what they wanted you to learn, and then at the end they will review what they just taught you. In other words, they tell you 3 times. Now sometimes uh, you don't need 3 times. You remember it after the first time because they told you it was important. Now they, of course, have activated your amygdala, and if the amygdala is activated, it is much easier for you to remember something. Research indicates that every time a memory is called up, there is a potential for distortion. New memories or new information may change the structure of the memory. The structures of questions of memories can further plant false memories. Some people are quite susceptible to false memories, stories made up by authorities. In one study, 25% of the respondents accepted the false memories, even though the memories didn't make a lot of sense. The ability of implanting false memories clouds the accuracy of such controversial memory formation as recovered memories of childhood sexual or physical abuse. delivered testimony that has been acquired from intense questioning in a criminal trial also has questionable accuracy. And this is right now there are two really exciting trials going on. One of them has to do with the 17-year-old that shot and killed. He shot 3 people, but he killed 2 of them in Kenosha, Wisconsin, in the 2020 riots that were taking place in Kenosha in August. The other one is the Arbery, Embry Arbery case down in Georgia, where the individual was jogging along. He was a young black man, and these individuals thought he was stealing things. Of course, he's in jogging outfit, so you can see he doesn't. Well, anyway, we won't go into that. Anyway, so both trials have to do with how people remember how something happened. And because we have so many videos of all these things, it's a little bit easier to see what's going on. But of course, if people just had to remember things, that changes things markedly. So it's really kind of fascinating to listen to the defense witnesses and the prosecution witnesses, how they remember different things about what happened. I'm going to show you a video, maybe. Yeah, here we go.
This is a test of selective attention. Count how many times the players wearing white pass the basketball. How many passes did you count? The correct answer is 15 passes. But did you see the gorilla? This video is from research by Daniel Simons and Christopher Chabris and is copyrighted. It is available for use in talks, training, and teaching on DVDs from VisCog Productions.
Okay, that's one of them. Let me do another one here.
This is a test of selective attention. Count every time a new exclamation point comes on screen.
Now it's time for our wrap-up. Let's give it everything we've got. Ready? Begin.
Artificial amateurs aren't it all amazing? Analytically, I assault, animate things. Broken barriers bounded by the bomb beat. Buildings are broken, basically I'm bombarding. Casually create catastrophes, casualties, canceling cats got their canopies collapsing. Detonate a diamond tank, daily doing dope. Demonstrations, Don Dada on the down low. Eating other editors with each and every energetic, epileptic episode, elevated etiquette. Furious, fat, fabulous, fantastic. Flurries of funk felt feeding the fanatics. Gift got great, global goods gone glorious.
Welcome to Intermission. Yeah, Intermission.
Now it's time for our wrap-up. Let's give it everything we've got. Ready? Begin.
Artificial amateurs aren't it all amazing? Analytically, I assault, animate things. Broken barriers bounded by the bomb beat. Buildings are broken, basically I'm bombarding. Casually create catastrophes, casualties, canceling cats got the canopies collapsing. Detonate a diamond tank daily doing dope. Demonstrations, Don Dada on the down low. Eating other editors with each and every energetic, epileptic episode. Elevated etiquette. Furious, fat, fabulous, fantastic. Flurries of funk felt feeding the fanatics. Gift got great, global goods gone glorious. Getting godly in this game with the glorious. Hit 'em high, hella hype, historical. Hey, Holocaust hymns, hear 'em holler at your homeboy. Imitators idolize, I intimidate. In an instant, I'll rise in an irate state. Juiced on my jams like Jericho's jocking joints. Just
Okay, one more. One more.
To test just how much attention the attention-stealing design of the new Skoda Fabia actually steals, we left one parked on this ordinary road in West London. We wanted to see if its sharp crystalline shapes, bold lines, and lower, wider profile would attract the desired level of attention. Will the 17-inch black alloy wheels stop passers-by in their tracks? Will the angular headlights attract the attention of other road users? Will a crowd gather to check out its fresh, sporty look? Well, not quite. But did the attention-stealing design distract you from noticing that the entire street has been changing right before your very eyes? Don't believe us? Have another look. Did you spot the van changing to a taxi? How about the scooter changing to a pair of bicycles? Or the lady holding a pig? Let alone the fact that the entire street is now completely different. Didn't think so.
All right. Okay, we may have trouble with this one because I think one of those is copyrighted. Memory is formed around the structure of our senses. Attributes of memory include time, space, sensory perceptions, response, cognitive effect of the stimuli. Each attribute seems to utilize different neural structures. From studies of brain imaging and memory, as well as evidence from brain damage due to injury and disease, scientists have been able to map different memory processes. Spatial location takes place in the hippocampus. Memory of your own response is in your caudate. Object recognition is in your extrastriate visual cortex. And there you go, where most of your there's your hippocampus. Spatial location, your caudate nucleus is right on top of the hippocampus. And we're talking about the caudate here. A normal caudate regulates emotional messages from the frontal lobe. A damaged caudate has diminished regulatory ability. When functioning properly, the caudate may allow only a little bit of frustration to travel to the frontal lobes as a reaction to an upsetting situation, such as lima beans for dinner. And personally, I don't like lima beans either. However, a damaged caudate may leave the gate open for too long, allowing a great deal of frustration to travel to the frontal lobes, which may result in an extremely intense emotional response. The caudate relays information to the frontal lobes, and undamaged caudate regulates and organizes information received from other areas of the brain, such as the occipital lobe, responsible for vision, and transmits the information to the frontal lobes. The frontal lobes then instruct another area of the brain to carry out a particular task based on the transmitted information. A damaged caudate, on the other hand, may not properly deliver the information to the frontal lobes. The result, unawareness, may mean that particular task, such as getting a haircut, is not carried out. Get a haircut. I see that my hair is too long. I see that my hair is too long, and so you don't get it. Okay. The caudate as a secretary. The caudate may work much like a secretary in that it is responsible for regulating and organizing messages or information for the boss. If the secretary gives the boss a stack of unorganized mail and telephone messages, he or she may be unable to manage the incoming messages efficiently and become overwhelmed. Whereas a damaged caudate can lead to slowed thought processing, undamaged caudate enables the frontal lobes to perform quickly and efficiently. Extrastriate, visual cortex, object recognition. Of course, this is in the back of your head. Memory formation and use involves 3 stages. The first stage is encoding. Iconic memory or pictures is encoded in your right prefrontal cortex and your parahippocampal cortex in both hemispheres. Echoic memory or sounds is encoded in your left prefrontal cortex and your left parahippocampal cortex. Iconic memory, that's where it takes place. Echoic memory, and that's where it takes place, right above your eye. Memory formation, your left eye. Memory formation and use involves 3 stages: encoding, and the second is consolidation. Consolidation takes time to place information from intermediate memory to long-term memory. The hippocampal system is part of the process, but not a repository for long-term memories. Memories are further processed in the medial temporal region and probably the midline diencephalic region. Long-term memory takes place in various regions of the cortex. Consolidation. Memory formation, okay, it involves 3 stages, encoding, consolidation, the last is retrieval. During retrieval, the area of the cortex that is used for that type of memory is activated. Researchers have discovered that emotion often enhances memory. However, emotion can weaken information that is not central to the emotional theme. Memory seems to be enhanced by the beta-adrenergic stress hormones. Research indicates that emotional stories are easier to learn. This is because stress hormones from the adrenal glands activated by the emotions activate beta-adrenergic receptors. This is why memories of trauma are so readily remembered. To exacerbate the problem for some sufferers of post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD, remembering the trauma causes the stress hormones to be activated. And this, of course, is a form of stimulation, which in turn reinforces the bad memories to occur again. One hypothesis of PTSD is that since the memory was established by the adrenergic stress hormones, it was remembered better. When this memory is recalled, either by intrusive memory or flashback, the memory is reintroduced and so is reinforced. By administering anti-adrenergic drugs soon after the incident, it would reduce the impact of intrusive thoughts and flashbacks. Looking at combat records from Vietnam, researchers determined that individuals who suffered from traumas as a child were more likely to develop PTSD post-combat. This may be because individuals who have suffered from trauma as children have already established the beta-adrenergic memory pathway. Drugs such as propranolol, which suppresses beta-adrenergic activity, might be used before or directly after the trauma to prevent such pathways from forming. And they tried this in Iraq and Afghanistan. It wasn't very successful, unfortunately, especially with the individuals who had trauma before in their lives at some point. I have 3 brothers. All of us served in Vietnam. I have one brother that developed PTSD fairly significantly. Of the 4 of us, he had the most traumatic childhood. He had rheumatic fever when he was in the 2nd grade and missed a whole year of school. So it was really difficult for him to get back into the swing of things. Very traumatic for him, having a disease that wouldn't allow him to go to school for a whole year. So he missed, and it was the social aspect that seemed to bother him more than anything else. He was able to pick up the rest of the information, all the math and all the language, and he did all the reading he was supposed to. So he wasn't behind academically, he was behind socially. And he was the only one that really suffered from PTSD. Now, the other three of us have PTSD to a minor extent. Nothing as serious as he has. He has a degree of paranoia. There are certain things he can't tolerate. He can't tolerate somebody dying. If somebody dies, both of my parents have died over the last 20 years or so, and he wasn't able to deal with either of those situations. Didn't go to either funeral. Um, the other thing he can't handle is 4th of July. He can't handle fireworks. He hides in his room and plays very loud music. Medial, temporal, hippocampal, and diencephalic systems are needed to form new declarative long-term memories. These areas are activated in both encoding and retrieval of declarative memories. Sensory motor skills such as mirror tracing, basal ganglia, cerebellum, and motor cortex. Cognitive skills such as the Towers of Hanoi have to do with the cerebral cortex. And this is the Towers of Hanoi. It's a children's game. My kids had one of these when they were growing up. And the idea is that you move everything onto another stick. B is usually the one that you're trying to stack everything up on. But you can't put a bigger one on a smaller one. So, you have to figure out how to do that. And it's possible. It's possible to do that. My daughter did it in about 3 minutes. And of course, it took me forever to do it. But when she was like 2 or 3 years old, she already had it down pat. Perceptual skills, learning to read mirror reversed text. That happens in your occipital lobe activation. And if you've ever tried to read something upside down or read something in a something backwards, it's not the easiest thing in the world, but you can do it. And here's an example of it. Oh, hello there. I didn't see you come in. I was too busy reading off this teleprompter. It does some pretty cool things. You can edit your scripts on the page, or copy pages, copy paste them here to import them. That can't be a Q. It's got to be a G. Them from another program. It'll even save it for you if you happen to leave the page. That's some smart thinking. If you're using an iPad or an Android tablet, add a shortcut to your home screen for full screen. What was that? IMQOR, I don't know what that is. There appears to be a degree of decline in the ability to learn and remember as humans age. Obviously, I'm 72 years old and I can't read that very well. So probably you're going to keep going. You're going too slow. There appears to be a degree of decline in the ability to learn and remember as humans age. How much decline depends on heredity, education, and activity levels of the individual. This is one of the reasons why they suggest that as you get older, instead of just sitting down watching television, that you challenge your mind by doing Sudokus or crossword puzzles or playing games. My wife likes to put together, she has a program on her iPad where she does jigsaw puzzles. Actually, the elderly are able to recall memories as long as the memory cues are adequate. And of course, that's the basic problem. Are the memory cues adequate? And that is the end of the chapter. We have one more. This was week 14. So there's one more chapter to go. And I'll talk to you next week.